Yikes! A total breakdown in trust. An extraordinary scoop from the highly respected news website Page Six, who have been told by leading royal author Robert Jobson that King Charles insisted on having a witness present for the duration of his face-to-face meeting with Harry, Meghan and the kids.
King Charles insisted on a witness during the first face-to-face with Harry, Meghan and the children. Why? Because trust is broken, and that witness was Queen Camilla. Here's what that says about the royals, the Sussexes, and what comes next.
Now, it's abundantly clear that King Charles was deeply worried that the Sussexes might go on to misrepresent what happened, which, of course, they stand accused of doing in the past, and therefore he felt he needed protection. Of course, we know that the Sussexes have weaponized conversations that have happened in the past whilst they were frontline serving royals, including the horrendous and unfounded accusation that an unnamed member of the royal family was racist. Now, following the book Spare and the traitorous Oprah interview, not to mention the deeply offensive Harry and Meghan Netflix documentary series, in which Meghan openly mocked Queen Elizabeth, the palace issued a very elegant response at the time. They said, recollections may vary. Well, now we have it on good authority that the king was not going to allow himself to be vulnerable to the Sussexes doing exactly the same thing all over again.
Page Six and royal author Robert Jobson reported that Charles demanded someone be present for the HIGHGROVE meeting.
And their children pulled out.
After years of public accusations, he didn't want to be alone with Harry and Meghan, and he chose Camilla.
And so he insisted on having someone there alongside him by way of protection. And that person, I can reveal, was the person he trusts most in the world, his darling wife, Camilla. So, royal author Robert Jobson, who's a good friend of mine, he's been a regular on my Talk TV show, tells Page Six that Camilla's attendance was very deliberate. This wasn't an accident, and this was not a courtesy. It was not a gesture. It was protection. And it's all because of a total lack of trust between King Charles and his runaway son. Now, I think this is fascinating because quite clearly, King Charles wants to rebuild a relationship with his son, and he wants to see his grandchildren on a regular basis. Who could deny him such a privilege? And by the way, what about poor old Thomas Markle Sr.? Wouldn't he like to see his grandkids as well that he hasn't even met? But what's interesting is that whilst Charles is trying to build bridges with Harry, Meghan and the kids, that doesn't mean that he trusts his boy. He does not. King Charles is not confident to spend an hour or two with the Sussexes and not be fearful that that will be used against him in a future documentary, a future interview, because, of course, Oprah would love to have the sequel, or, may God help us, Meghan, My Story. So this is really damning. And I think that if you're Prince Harry and you reflect on the fact that your old man didn't feel safe being alone with you, then you've got a problem. Because yes, there are going to be regular visits. Harry's going to be in the UK 3, 4, 5 times a year. It's my belief that ultimately what the Sussexes want is to spend half of the year in the United Kingdom. Why? Because they have failed in the United States and they need the royal connections in order to make money, in order to be relevant. And it's not impossible that Archie and Lily could be educated at a British public school.
Why insist on a witness? The palace has long faced claims the Sussexes have weaponized private conversations. Spare, the Oprah interview, and the Netflix series all fuel that fear. The palace response was clear: recollections may vary. A witness acts as protection, both legal and reputational, and Camilla was both a partner and that neutral third party. This isn't just a PR move, it signals something deeper, a breakdown of trust at the heart of the family. If a father feels he needs protection to meet his own son, the relationship is formal, procedural, even transactional. Charles wants regular contact with his grandchildren, but he doesn't trust Harry not to monetize or publicize private moments. That fear isn't new. Reports say the late Queen also limited private contact with Harry after the Oprah episode.
A moment. But King Charles doesn't feel safe alone with his own son. Let that sink in. So Robert Jobson, and by the way, he knows his onions. He's an incredibly well-connected journalist. He did a great interview with my pal, Tom Sykes, which I can recommend you check out on the Royalist show, which is on YouTube. Highly recommended. But Jobson says the true bit out loud. The Queen was there for a reason. He goes on to tell Page Six, she was there to ensure there was another witness to everything that was said. Now, the gathering marked the first time in 4 years that Charles had seen Harry, Meghan and their children, Archie and Lily. But after years of public accusations from the Sussexes, the trust just isn't there. And in my view, then it's not a full relationship. If you can't relax and be on your own with your kids, it's not a full relationship. It's formal. It is procedural. It's transactional. And I think what it also tells us is that perhaps Charles is not that fussed about having a deep relationship with Harry, about, bear hugs and blood is thicker than water and just being like soulmates, which is how I am with my kids. And I'm sure you are with yours. I've got 2 boys. And unlike Harry and Meghan, I care about their privacy, which is why I've given them fake names on this show. I call them Elton and Bernie. And my boys, we are so close. They are my world. They're everything. They're not even 99% of my life. They're 120% of my life.
Photos matter. Meghan wanted photographs, symbolic proof of a royal return. The palace refused. The meeting happened behind closed doors with no photos, and that itself was a message. When Harry pushed for visible security and spectacle, it wasn't purely about safety. It was about image, looking and feeling royal again. The palace chose privacy over performance.
To tell you today. So let's just get on with this because it's absolutely huge, right? The trust isn't there. Do you need, let me know in the comments, folks, do you need protection from your kids? Because I don't need protection from mine. The trust is 100% there. But what's going to happen, you see, King Charles feels that he needs Camilla there for a few reasons. First of all, just emotional support, ballast. I've got no doubt that Charles was anxious before this face-to-face meeting, after everything he and the family have been through at the hands of Harry and Meghan. This guy, King Charles, must have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, after the book Spare, after the documentaries, after the podcast interviews, after that interview that he did in Australia on their horrible fake royal tour, where they essentially, like a pair of ghouls, posed for photographs with sick children at a cancer hospital and victims of Bondi, which was the worst atrocity to befall the great country of Australia. But also on that trip, Harry said, my dad wasn't really that great, yeah? I'm hoping that, my parenting will be an upgrade. I don't think so, Harry. I think your parenting was a downgrade because you're making Archie and Lily celebrities. You keep calling them Prince Archie and Princess Lily, even though you claim in your book Spare that it was so awful being royal. If it was so awful being royal, why are you making your kids royal? Why aren't you doing what Princess Anne did, who is my total hero, and not calling your kids Prince and Princess, which is what she did with Peter and Zara, and they turned out to be a great pair of kids. Down to earth, talented, very attractive, Peter and Zara. And the reason why is because Princess Anne is an incredibly good-looking woman. She's so attractive. I find her so regal. She would have been a great queen. If I could have tweaked the rules, I would have made Anne the queen. I love King Charles. Oh, well, you see, Camilla, I require a witness because otherwise I'll say things to Harry, you see, and then I'll say something to Meghan, like, that's a very nice dress, Meghan. And Meghan will then come back in a couple of years' time and claim that when I said her dress was nice, That was a microaggression, you see. And then I said she had...
Camilla's role wasn't only evidentiary. She was emotional ballast for Charles, a partner he trusts. After the fallout of public accusations, having a loved one present reduces vulnerability. Robert Jobson and other royal historians note this parallels the late Queen's approach, protecting herself with trusted staff when dealing with fraught conversations.
So, Jobson said that ultimately only those inside the room know exactly what happened during the conversation. He said the only people who know are the people who were present, which is why Queen Camilla had to be there. So there's a few things. First of all, it is a witness. So it is somebody that can set the record straight if Harry and Meghan run off and say, yeah, well, you know, Harry, I'm Harry, yes. And what happened is, you see, that, they were really unkind about Meghan and they were so racist about her the whole time, non-stop racism, yeah. It was just like a festival of racisms non-stop, yeah. And then they were racist about Archie and Lily, and they were also racist about the vase, and they were racist about the carpet as well. And then we had some racist soup, and then we had racist crunchy bread with the soup, like a baguette with racist butter, you see. And the whole thing was ultra super racist, yeah. Right? This is why Camilla is there, to be a witness, to go, no, no one was racist about the soup. By the way, let me know in the comments, what is your favorite? The other reason she was there is support for Charles, because he needed that. Because the guy, I think, has got PTSD. He's got trauma from everything he's been through. And why wouldn't he? To see his family impugned like that. So she's there as his rock. And I got to tell you, I admire Camilla. We're going to get into their relationship in a moment, how it all started, Charles and Camilla. I've got lots of interesting, juicy detail. But he loves that woman and she loves him. In fact, it's one of the great love affairs because it was like Romeo and Juliet, wasn't it? And it was, or maybe West Side Story, that it was meant, they weren't allowed to get married, like forbidden love, which is, of course, the best kind. But they love each other. And so he needed her. Well, Camilla, you see, I need you there, you see, because of the support. You're like my rock, exactly like when I became king. During my coronation, when I took to the throne, you see, the blinking fountain pen stopped working. I'm very cross about it. I'm very cross about the fountain pen. It exploded in my hand, you see. It exploded, you see, in one's hand. And Camilla stepped in and she said, come on, Charles. Calm down. It's only a pen. I love Camilla so much. Actually, Kinsey Schofield, who's coming back on the show soon, she said that Camilla's voice is a little gravelly than that. So it's like a, come on, Charles. No, but then we're in Doria territory. Hi, Doria. My mother, Doria, was never in jail. She was not in a slammer, but if she was in a slammer, she'd do very well. Thanks, Meghan. I'll stick to the prison grub. Now, folks, you guys are amazing. But sometimes you interrupt me when I'm really busy. We've got some stuff to get through, so please, let's crack on. So, Robert Jobson, a great guy, legendary journalist, he says the only people who know what happened at that face-to-face summit with Harry, Meghan, Archie, Lily, King Charles, and Camilla are the people in the room. And Charles needs a neutral third party, which is Camilla, and he needs someone that cares for him, that he can trust, which is his beloved wife. And it's interesting because we know that Harry and Meghan were told no photos, which Meghan is furious about. Why? Because she needed that photo opportunity. She needed the image that says, I'm back, I'm royal again. So whether it's her going, in the car, zooming into Highgrove House, or some sort of image of her in the garden somewhere, or hugging King Charles, or whatever it is, Meghan needed photographic evidence of her royal return. And I think it's fantastic that the king called their bluff and said, well, you're arguing that you want your kids to be with their grandparents. Fine, we'll do that. Behind closed doors, no photographs, and no revelations about what happened. And the great irony is that at that point, Harry and Meghan are thinking, oh, that's not really what we wanted. What we wanted is a very, very clear message that we're back.
What's Harry and Meghan's play? Media, deals, visibility. They sell access and narrative, books, interviews, documentaries. If the palace is worried, there's precedent, key royal figures, limited contact to avoid being misrepresented. Their strategy increasingly uses the children, Archie and Lilibet, in ways the palace sees as commodifying family. That drives a wedge between private family ties and public brand building.
That's why Harry wants the armed security. The reason why he wants the cop cars and the blue lights and the seven-car cavalcade, the reason why he wants the helicopters and the police outriders and the SWAT team, the reason why he wants the close protection and the sirens is it means that whenever he's in the UK, he's royal. That's what it is. He wants to look and feel royal. What he doesn't want is to be in a budget SUV with blacked out windows being zoomed from one location to another, which is actually what happened. It's how Harry got around. It's how Archie, Lily and Meghan got around. My husband! And they were perfectly safe. So in the end, it wasn't about the kids. And the royal security was not about safety. It's about getting that picture, getting that footage of them back in a royal property. And by the way, in my view, they already went public with that most recent meeting. In my view, Harry and Meghan have already broken the rules, broken that promise to say nothing. We don't have a photo, but we have People magazine, which is the propaganda arm of the relentless and ruthless Sussex public relations machine, which never sleeps. And People magazine are reporting that Meghan felt great sadness about how it all played out. Well, how do we know that? How do People magazine know that Meghan is very sad about that? Is it because Meghan's been on the phone to them? And is that not therefore reneging on the promise, breaking the promise made to King Charles that you would say nothing? Because if we're hearing about what happened at Highgrove House from People magazine, well, then we're hearing it from Harry and Meghan. So the whole thing is pretty wild. And I've got to tell you that Charles needing a witness, Charles needing Camilla there for protection is not unprecedented, because the Queen, the late Queen Elizabeth, needed protection when she was on her own with Harry. So after the Oprah interview, and while Harry was working on Spare, the late Queen Elizabeth became deeply distrustful. She reportedly would not take Harry's phone calls unless a lady in waiting or another trusted aide was present. Queen Elizabeth, one of the greatest Britons ever, whose first prime minister was Winston Churchill. We shall fight them on the beaches. Now, this is all courtesy of the royal historian Hugo Vickers in his brilliant book, Queen Elizabeth II, A Personal History. The Queen would not take Harry's phone calls unless a lady in waiting or another trusted aide was present. The Queen needed protection from Harry. And you're telling me he's the good guy? You're telling me that he's down to earth, that he's a great humanitarian, but his father and his late grandmother, who was a British icon, needed a witness present in case he lied about what was said, and he's one of the good guys? I'm so sorry, folks. I'll say it once. I've said it in the past, and I'll say it again. Harry's not a nice person.
Compare William and Catherine, discreet, limited releases. Prince George's new photo and short beach video were minimal and controlled, a template for raising children in the public eye without constant exposure. This quiet approach contrasts with the Sussexes' constant releases and multi-platform exposure. Both parenting styles tell us what each branch prioritizes.
Be much, but here's the point. Hugo Vickers reveals that Queen Elizabeth didn't trust Harry. King Charles doesn't trust Harry. And of course, William. And I quote from an insider, effing loathes his brother. Yikes. So Hugo Vickers also claims that Queen Elizabeth avoided private meetings with Harry and Meghan and refused to allow a photographer when they introduced Lily during the Platinum Jubilee. You see, that's why the Queen was so wise. The Queen knew exactly what Harry was like. Didn't trust him. She was so smart, and she was much tougher than Charles, who's been a ridiculous softie. I don't think he should have allowed this face-to-face meeting. You shouldn't have a meeting with someone whereby you need a witness. You don't want someone like that in your life. You can't have people in your life that are a negative influence, that talk you down, that lie about you, and that you can't trust. And so the Queen was very smart. And it's interesting because despite the tensions that have defined recent years, Robert Jobson believes that Charles agreed to the reunion because he wants to avoid future regrets. Robert said, "The king is living with cancer, and that changes your perspective," adding that the king has been reflecting on what matters most. Now, it's quite interesting. Separately, by the way, Page 6 reported that Harry recently told guests at the Time 100 gala that his father, who's been undergoing cancer treatment since 2024, is doing great. He can't resist. He cannot resist blabbing a little bit, can he, about what his father is up to following their face-to-face meeting. By the way, on his own again, Harry, always on his own. Meghan's not loyal. He loses a court case to the Daily Mail. We'll be reporting on the potential unlimited legal costs. Paul Dacre from the Daily Mail is looking for $75 million, a huge portion of which Harry could be liable for. We'll get you more on that very, very shortly. But it's interesting. King Charles needed Camilla there. And let me tell you, it's been one of the great love affairs of British history. So she was called Camilla Shand, and she was Prince Charles's girlfriend in the early 1970s before he married Diana in 81. Their relationship continued during the marriage. Diana's 1995 Panorama interview crystallized the public narrative. She said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded," which is wonderful dry humor and wonderful understatement. And Harry, he's got a chip on his shoulder about Camilla. In Spare, he repeatedly refers to Camilla as the other woman. As a child and teenager, he wondered whether she would prove to be a wicked stepmother from storybooks.
So what now? Expect more guarded reunions, private visits without cameras, and a continued tug of war over narrative control. Charles wants contact, but on terms that limit risk. In short, the witness wasn't a slight, it was a safeguard. In a family where memories have become public currency, protecting the truth matters.
So the bottom line is that she's an amazing woman.
What do you think?
Camilla.
Is it fair for the palace to demand witnesses, or does that prove the family is beyond repair? Comment below and subscribe for more royal analysis. Comment your view, subscribe, and suggested next video.